Communication is essential in everyday life. Today, we are going to be telling you about what role the news, protests, and social media play in voting. I am Andrew, along with Leslie, Hector, and David. We all have been seeing what the role communication plays in voting in elections for many years now. Imagine not being able to look up anything about a candidate or opinions on his or her policies, or even being able to see how the recent debates ended up. And you might not even be able to be caught up politically and even ready to vote. This scenario would be a nightmare for 62% of Americans who get their news and political information off of social media. And this is according to the University of Oregon Journal of School. And this means the people or laws that have the most influence in the news and social media have an advantage over the ones that don't. And now we're going to move on to see what role the news plays within elections.
As social media becomes more popular, some news outlets have shifted the way in which they cover political elections. There's been a shift to entertain rather than to inform. This type of communication has an impact in how people decide to engage in their community. A paper published in 2000 argues that watching news and current affairs programs is associated with strengthened political engagement, and that even though news programs are not expected to change the view of individuals, they can be expected to strengthen political movements. Another study published in 1998 by Devon Shaw mentions that people who choose to watch these programs may be motivated by information and social interaction goals, therefore gaining social empathy and carrying out social roles based on ideas they encounter. Different news organizations cover candidates however they want, but at the end of the day, the same thing is accomplished. The audience becomes interested in the political process and in their community. Thanks to this interest, a person is more likely to go out and vote, or to go out to a protest, to voice their opinion, to try to make a change. News outlets have the responsibility of informing large audiences, and the more knowledge that they have, the better decisions they'll be able to make to improve their community. Now that we've covered how communication through the news impacts citizens, let's now look at the role of social media.
With social media platforms reigning supreme, it's no surprise that they have also heavily influenced communication within communities as well, specifically in politics. Twitter and Facebook are no strangers to politically charged debates meant to instigate change and action. The truth is, social media plays a major part in civic engagements. Through my own Twitter, I have seen more politically inclined content than anywhere else. During the 2016 presidential election, Twitter was flooded with users trying to sway others every which way. Every other tweet was basically an endorsement for a certain candidate, meanwhile it slandered the other. And Facebook was no different. According to a study done by Nature Journal in 2012, Facebook feeds proved to influence voting patterns. The study suggests that for the 2012 election, messages promoted by friends increased turnout directly by about 60,000 voters, and indirectly through social contagion by another 280,000 voters, for a total of 340,000 additional votes. Now let's go back a few years. According to Aaron Smith with the Pew Internet in 2013, in 2008, only 11% of social media users said that they use the site to post about political issues, and for the 2012 election, the number more than doubled. When asked if the opinions expressed online directly affected their vote, 18% said that they had decided to take action after having read something online, and 43% said that they had decided to do more research after learning more about a political issue because they had read something through social media. And in fact, online political users have also started participating in more real-life civic engagements. 63% have recently started getting involved in political groups to help their community, the national average being only 48%. As a result of social media, local communities have been affected through the communication being provided through such platforms. Twitter and Facebook have been the root of some people taking political action, and if the amount of users using social media as a platform for change nearly doubled from 2008 to 2012, one can only expect it to grow at a steady rate over the next few years. So now that we've discussed both social media and the news, let's move on to protests.
Our society has been using protests to convey ideas for many decades now. But why do people still use the tactic of protesting? People use protesting to gather together people of the same mindset to fight against a policy, whether it be equality or some other policy legislation that they do not agree with. And they try to appeal to those in power who can take the action to rectify or change these laws. There are many different types of protesting, which include marches, where they walk along a route. There are rallies, where they gather to listen to a speaker or a group of speakers. There is picketing, where they surround an area with signs or boards with sayings on them. There are also sit-ins, which are kind of self-explanatory, where they sit in an area until the issue is addressed or they are convinced to leave the area. Some popular protests throughout America's history starts off with the Boston Tea Party in the 1700s, and then there were many women's suffrage voting protests, and then again in the 1960s there were many civil rights protests with Martin Luther King Jr. being head of that. And these protests were effective not just because of them gathering together, but because of the effect they have afterwards, and when legislators notice that these people care deeply and passionately of what they believe in.
Now that you heard the role each of these channels of communication, the news, protests, and social media plays within elections and voting, you can see just how much people use social media for political purposes and how powerful the news and protests can be when it comes to elections. Plus, seeing how big an impact communication has on elections, whether it be the news, protests, or social media platforms, it's important to see how the communication techniques help and hinder the election process, as well as after the election. Now you can use these platforms like others do to either keep up on happenings or to engage with people to help get something passed, or even just educating yourself on your rights. I now hope you know how big of a role communication plays in elections and voting. Thank you.